Hi everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm from dinosaurmama.com, and we are here to master all things crafty, from Cricut to X-Tool, paper crafts to vinyl, and we are going to do that together. So don't forget to like and subscribe and keep up with my channel and the new weekly tutorials that I have. In today's tutorial, we are going to work on this paper hydrangea topiary. That's a mouthful. You can find the free SVG template for the hydrangeas on my blog, and I'm going to link that below as well. All the materials and tools that you need are going to be linked below, but you're going to need about 5 to 6 sheets of cardstock paper. I used a 65-pound weight in blue, but you can use any color that you want. I used acrylic paint, but you can also use alcohol inks to color the ends of your petals for some definition. I used some gemstones throughout. Those are optional, and I got those at Walmart. A vase, a dowel, and something to stick your dowel into. Or you can actually add a ribbon on top and hang this if you want a hanging topiary. You're also going to want to use hot glue and then the styrofoam inside. I used a heart shape, but you can really use any shape that you want. So let's get started. I started by cutting out all of my papers on my Cricut using a standard mat. I only started with 24 petals, and I did these about 2 inches wide. I ended up cutting over 100 petals. So I cut about 5 to 6 mats of my hydrangea template that you can find for free on my website. So go ahead and just cut about 125 petals. I used this Dollar Tree brand acrylic paint. Again, you can use alcohol ink. And yes, I went through and I painted every single one. I really feel like this added great definition to the flowers when they were put onto the topiary. I also, at the end, when I had done 5 sheets of these hydrangeas already, just decided to paint them while they were on my Cricut mat. Just be aware that some paint might bleed through to the mat, so you're going to want to wipe that away immediately. This is what it looks like. There's nothing fancy about the paint job. I'm not trying to do any sort of pattern. It dried super quick, and it also dried really light, so there was no need to try to make it look perfect. So I just painted all of them with a little sponge brush. You can also use a paintbrush. And then we'll get started on our rolling once you have everything painted. Again, I'm just using a foam sheet that I folded in half. I don't have one of those special mats, and I'm also using a 1/2 teaspoon to round out my flowers. If you don't have these tools, you can also just use your fingers to give them some shape. I'm just going around in a circle on the petals, and then I used my fingers to crinkle them up a little bit and give them some more shape. I folded some of the petals backwards, some forwards, and then when you're actually placing them onto the styrofoam mold, you're going to be shaping them even more. What's great about hydrangea flowers when you're making them with paper, they don't need to be perfect because they're all sort of scrunched together. So if you look at a real hydrangea or a picture of a hydrangea, all the petals are kind of folded together, they're scrunched up, they're all different sizes. So it doesn't matter if it's not perfect because we're going to just be scrunching it onto our styrofoam mold. And while you're doing this, make sure you're getting your hot glue gun ready to go. You can use craft glue, but I feel like hot glue just works a lot easier for this. So I did go through and I did this technique for all 125 petals that I ended up cutting. Towards the end, I got a little lazy and started grouping them together so I could move a little bit faster. So you can group them together while you are shaping them. I found this styrofoam heart at my local Dollar Tree, and I highly suggest checking those if you are looking for some good craft blanks. I will do a haul one day on here of all the crafting materials and tools I found at my Dollar Tree. And I decided after looking at this, I'm going to start towards the top of the heart on one side, and I began with just one single flower, and then I realized this will take me all day if I sit here and I try to glue on each individual petal. But that's how I started. I just glued it on towards the top. I started on the humps of the styrofoam, and then started to shape them. So instead of gluing each individual flower on, I grabbed my hot glue gun and I started making strips and working about 4 inches at a time, depending on where I was in the heart. The biggest thing is that you don't want to make your strips of hot glue too long because then the hot glue will set and it'll harden before you get your flowers on. Make sure you're also kind of using just the center and try to push those flowers together as much as possible. Once I was finished with this project, I actually kind of wish that I made more flowers, as ridiculous as that sounds, because there were still some holes that I could have filled up. So I probably could have put these flowers even closer together and scrunched them up just a little bit more. You can also fill the holes with gemstones or even paint them if you have a similar color paint. So there are options to fill in those holes. So now you can start going around. Again, I'm keeping these sections really small. I really kept them around 4 inches or even smaller to make sure my hot glue didn't set and that I wasn't sticking petals down where they shouldn't be. I didn't want them really laying onto the styrofoam. And so I made the entire crown and then I continued on to the next row down. The pattern of where you start or go doesn't really matter, but on your rows, you're gonna wanna alternate where you're putting the flowers. And what I mean by that is you wanna go in between the flowers that are above to try to fill in those spaces. And again, try to get the base of those flowers as close as you can. And as you add in more of these paper hydrangeas, you're going to see that it looks like a flower ball. So I had to make more, like I mentioned before, and I did the same thing for all 125 petals. I used my acrylic paint, I rounded them, and I shaped them with my fingers, and then I started gluing them all on again. I'm working in those little sections again and filling in all of my holes, and I decided to plug in my hot glue gun now because it stopped working on me mid-project. But I'm filling things in and getting closer as I work down, really trying to fill in any gaps. I hated at the end when I was looking and I was like, oh my God, I should have put a flower here. So really scrunch those up. Then when I flipped to the back, I started feeling more confident. So I moved my 4-inch section up to a little bit bigger. You just need to work fast. Like I mentioned before, you don't want your hot glue to dry. I mean, you can always add more glue, I guess, right? And I finished up the same way, scrunching together, putting hot glue, adding in more petals. This is a super easy project and it really turned out a lot more beautiful than what I thought it was going to be, because when I started, I was like, this looks terrible. But you know what? Sometimes you just have to keep going and the final product ends up looking awesome. And it's perfect for my foyer, for Valentine's Day decor, and truly the project cost under $8 for the whole thing, between the paper, the styrofoam, and the hot glue. So take your time filling in all those holes. And at the end, I had a few petals left. So what I did was I looked at where I saw some gaping spots that I could add to, and I just put a little bit of hot glue in there. You can see me using my fingers to try to fill in some of the holes, like where I could overlap petals. You can also add in some hot glue to those sections to try to glue down the petals just a smidge. And then I went through and I started adding in any extra petals that I had left over. So if you do have some left over, you can scrunch them up real small and stick them in and then fluff them out. So I have these adhesive gemstones. They are actually strips. The whole thing comes off in little sections. I got these at Walmart. They were relatively cheap. I want to say they were under $3 for the entire pack, and there's a lot of gemstones. And I really just added these randomly. You can add them into every center. You can also use push pins into the center of each flower if you want to add in a center. It's totally up to you. I thought the gems were a cute little addition, but these are totally optional. You definitely don't need them. And I was not going to put them into the center of every flower. I just felt like that might be too much for me. So I used my tweezers here and just put them in a little bit. They don't have the best adhesive on them, this particular brand. So next time I would actually add some glue to the back to make them stick. Now, optionally, you can add a dowel into the bottom. I just stuck it right into that styrofoam and trimmed it. And then I put it into a vase that I had with some leaves. And here's our final product, our paper hydrangea topiary. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and please comment below any other projects you'd like to see in the future. Happy crafting!